I never thought I'd make a trip to the DMV to save my life. I always thought that was just for wasting your life. But now I am strongly considering it, because otherwise I might end up just like that guy on the operation board with that same horrified facial expression to signal to the surgeon, please leave my kidneys alone. I still need those, actually, because I am, in fact, still alive, except in this game, they might not care about the buzzer, actually. The buzzer is irrelevant if you're presumed dead already. Like about half the country, according to the federal government survey, I checked the box for organ donation when I got my driver's license. Seems like a good thing to do. If I die and I have the chance to help someone else in need, why not do it? Why not get some benefit out of the loss of my life? And of course, that's not to say that the good doesn't happen or that everybody should now refuse organ donation. It's just, there is one question I hadn't seriously considered previously. What is the definition of dead? I guess I thought that term was more objective than it apparently is. But as always, when you get government bureaucrats involved, the term might not mean what you think it means.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yes.
What counts as sufficiently dead for organ harvesting is now the subject of an investigation by RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Department, this stemming from the story of a Kentucky man whose case was presented to Congress last year. In Lexington, Kentucky, in October 2021, TJ Hoover overdosed on drugs. He was hospitalized. After he was unresponsive for 2 days, his family agreed to remove life support and, per his prior wishes, donate his organs. But right at harvest time, TJ changed his actually still active mind. Apparently, it was a wake-up call.
But what happened next was horrifying.
He was then thrashing around, crying, trying to pull his tube out. He was pushing everybody's hands away that were trying to prep and drape him for surgery.
So TJ was deemed dead enough for organ harvesting, but he wasn't actually dead. Apparently, that misdiagnosis can happen more commonly with drug overdose cases like this one, because the drugs can make people seem less neurologically healthy and active than they actually are. Whatever happened, TJ's family is very clear about their conclusion now.
Do you think it's safe to be an organ donor in Kentucky?
I do not.
And TJ's case is not isolated. This is not some never happens but somehow did this one particular odd time type of incident. It's actually fairly common, and because of TJ's story, RFK Jr. and HHS are now investigating these events. Looking at just Kentucky, where TJ's case happened, and just data from 3 months this year, HHS discovered that in 20% of cases, 1 in 5 organ donors was wheeled in for donation, and the donor wasn't actually dead. Those are not almost never numbers. Those are much closer to a coin flip. Maybe he's dead, maybe he's not. Grab a scalpel, and I guess we'll find out. So the question naturally arises then, are these cases simply medical mistakes, errors in doctor judgment, or is there something more malicious going on? Well, as always, whether you're looking for incompetence or evil, the best place for the government to start looking is itself. HHS's investigation summary says there are questionable consent practices happening in organ transplants, implying there's a pressure on donors to hurry up and donate. And a corresponding New York Times investigation says pressure has been placed on the procurement organizations, as in the organ harvesters, to increase their yields. Pressure by whom? The federal government, of course, HHS itself. See, they looked into it to try to find the bad guy, and the investigation was very easy, because they are the bad guy. The way that organ transplants work is HHS contracts with nonprofits in each state to coordinate them, from extraction from the donor to delivery to the recipient. In 2020, HHS started grading these organizations based on how many transplants they arranged. For those below target numbers, well, contracts may be terminated. Raw volume seems like a very questionable metric in this context. Seems more like a quality over quantity type situation. What's better, 1 successful transplant or 100 botched ones? Well, this is the federal government, so of course a pile of botchery is preferable. Botch harder and faster. It's our only area of efficiency. But how do you even increase organ donation volume anyway? There are only so many people dying, and the circumstances that make organ donation even possible are fairly narrow, so either you have to kill people or you have to change the definition of what counts as dead, which is really just another way of killing people. And so the definition of dead, for the purpose of organ donation, has indeed changed. Historically, organ donations come from people who are brain dead, and they're kept on machines only to maintain the organs for donation. The life support is then withdrawn, and immediately after death, organs are removed. And that is still the case for most organ donations today. But there have also been technological advancements that have enabled new methods, according to the organ procurement organizations contracting with the government. Is it actually new tech or just a new definition? Maybe some of both, but the definition has certainly changed. It's not just brain-dead organ donors anymore. Now donations are happening from something called circulatory death. This isn't measured by neurological activity. It's measured by circulatory and respiratory functions, the heart and breathing. If those have stopped, the person is dead. The problem is, not necessarily. Unlike the more objective brain activity measurements, according to the New York Times investigation, circulatory death is more of a medical judgment call. Trust the experts, in other words. The science is settled. Come on. Do you really think that the same people who eagerly used every coercive method available to try to force a hastily developed vaccine on you would ever kill you wrongly? Either by mistake or by some determination that your life is secondary to some other interest. And wow, just like last time, the science correlates very neatly with financial considerations. Relying on circulatory death to start the organ harvest has produced the yields that the feds wanted. The system is now setting transplant records with this new medical judgment criteria, enabling tens of thousands of additional organ donations a year. And there certainly is plenty of good that has come from that, lives saved, I'm sure, but at what cost? And according to whose judgment about what lives are worth living and what lives aren't? Who deserves a chance and who doesn't? The Times investigation identified 55 medical workers in 19 states, saying they had personally witnessed at least one disturbing case of organ donation after circulatory death, including many instances of organ donor coordinators pursuing federal government number goals by pressuring medical staff to administer drugs to hasten the deaths of potential donors. Many of the individual stories are horror movie stuff. In Alabama, a woman with a cognitive disability choked on her lunch. They removed her from her ventilator and let her sit for an hour and a half to die. Then the surgeon started cutting open her chest, and whoops, look at that heart still beating. And wow, she's still breathing too. Hey, grab the needle and the thread. We got to stitch her back up. In West Virginia, a guy was paralyzed in a car accident and was wheeled into an operating room and asked for consent for organ donation as he was coming off sedatives. He responded with blinks indicating he did not consent. The organ harvesters wanted to continue anyway, based on perceived consent prior. In Colorado, a patient was removed from her ventilator while crying and looking around. She died, but not fast enough for the organ donation, so that case was especially troublesome. It may have been a hurried death without even the intended benefit of the organ donation itself. The situation was so bothersome, it took a surgical tech off the job. This tech says she thinks that if that woman had been given more time on the ventilator, she would have pulled through and survived. That tech quit her job and left the medical profession entirely for a while. She says it really messed with her for a long time and still does. Why? Because she feels like she was part of killing someone. The Times investigation says there are at least 12 cases across 9 states like this one. Hurried organ extractions that troubled medical workers and are now being investigated. The Times says most of those patients ultimately died, but that of course means some did not. Some were about to get harvested, but quite obviously were not dead because they're still alive today. In a New Mexico case, a woman was in a coma and the hospital told her family she was never going to recover. The family agreed to organ donation, but as the process began, they saw tears forming in her eyes. The doctor said, no, that's just a reflex. It's involuntary. It's unconscious. Her sisters said they saw her move. The doctor then asked her to blink her eyes, and she did. And the organ harvester still wanted to continue. No, those are still just more reflexes. Don't worry about it. Give her some more morphine and start slicing. The hospital refused, and that woman made a full recovery. She lives a normal life today. In response to this story, the Trade Association for these organ procurement nonprofits says, quote, It is misguided to focus on a small number of cases with bad outcomes. These stories paint a frightening, inaccurate, and unbalanced view of our system. And I'm sure that is numerically correct. Most organ donations are not a product of negligence or malice from morally void, bloodthirsty organ snatchers. However, you and your family will care quite a lot about a small number of bad outcomes, even if that number is 1 when it's your bad outcome. Statistical rarity is not a justification for crime. Yeah, sure, your dad or your mom or your brother or your sister got murdered, but come on. That's the first murder in this town in like a decade, so let's not paint a frightening, inaccurate picture about it. And that is not an overstatement. That's what these events, even if uncommon, are. They're potential crime scenes. And potential is a key word there. I won't accuse anybody without compelling evidence, but if you intentionally kill somebody without justification, there is a criminal term for that, and that's why these investigations are happening. And now I'm personally worried, despite the reassurances of the Organ Harvesting Trade Association, because if actively declining the donation on the operating table sometimes doesn't even count, well, then neither will taking a Sharpie to that line and little heart on my driver's license. I don't think you can just cross it out. So if I do change my mind on the matter, which doesn't mean I wouldn't donate, by the way, it just means I want that decision left with my family, not doctors or government agents. But if I change my mind now, I'm left with the only situation more hopeless than incapacitation in the hospital on the edge of death. I'll have to talk to some government bureaucrat to help save me from some other government bureaucrat. And in that situation, I'm already dead anyway. So I guess I'll just save my time and accept my fate. And if it actually comes to it, I'll settle for the slim hope of desperately blinking my eyes to stop the bone saw instead. Seems like a much higher likelihood of success. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams as live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Come on. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, that means you probably found some value in the video. If you found some value in the video, please consider supporting my material. You can do that one time or recurring for as little as $1 a month. It not only helps me sustain, but it helps me pay the people who make my videos possible. Linked in the description for you, mattchristiansenmedia.com/support. Thanks for listening.